Well, happy Valentine's Day to everybody, and happy Friday as well. And for all you lovebirds out there, have a great day. Go out for supper, enjoy yourselves. And what are you doing watching this video? You should be out there romancing one another. Anyway, it is Friday, and it is Valentine's Day. Our shout out for today has nothing to do with love or Valentines or anything else. Although I guess the love of a hobby might come into it. But we're shouting out Depthspader. That's Depthspader. And he is a treasure hunter metal detectorist. And he is so far having a fantastic 2020. He seems to be attracting silver coins faster than they can be minted. So you might want to just go and check out his channel and give him a thumbs up and leave him a comment. Alright, let's move on to our story. And being that this is Valentine's Day, we have a story of romance and intrigue. And it is titled The Courtship of Miles Standish. In April of 1621, 37-year-old Miles Standish, commander of Plymouth's Small Guard, had taken an extremely grateful and admiring John Alden into his home. Recently widowed and lonely, the captain requested of John, though he was, quote, embarrassed and culling his phrases, "Go to the damsel Priscilla, the loveliest maiden of Plymouth. Say that a blunt old captain, a man not of words but of actions, offers his hand and his heart. Not in these words. You who are bred as a scholar can say it in an elegant language." Unquote. Standish had not guessed that John himself was desperately in love with Priscilla. Quote, "When he had spoken, John Alden, the fair-haired, taciturn stripling, all aghast at his words, surprised, embarrassed, bewildered, trying to mask his dismay by treating the subject with lightness, tried to persuade Standish to do it himself. Standish said, 'Surely you cannot refuse what I ask in the name of our friendship.' Then made answer John Alden, 'The name of friendship is sacred. What you demand in that name, I have not the power to deny you.' So friendship prevailed over love, and Alden went on his errand. Though he was sent because he had read, quote, of the pleadings and wooings of lovers, unquote, the handsome youth delivered his message bluntly. Mute with amazement and sorrow, Priscilla, the Puritan maiden, looked into Alden's face. Her eyes dilated with wonder, feeling his words like a blow that stunned her and rendered her speechless, till at length she exclaimed, interrupting the ominous silence, quote, "If the great captain of Plymouth is so very eager to wed me, why does he not come himself and take the trouble to woo me? If I am not worth the wooing, I surely am not worth the winning." Unquote. Still the faithful Alden continued to speak on his friend's behalf. But as he warmed and glowed in his simple and eloquent language, quite forgetful of self and full of praise of his rival, archly the maiden smiled, and with eyes running with laughter, said in a tremulous voice, "Why don't you speak for yourself, John?" The youth, filled with wild exultation, rushed like a man insane and wandered along the seashore until he could bring himself to go home. Then John Alden spake and related the wondrous adventure from beginning to end, minutely, just as it had happened. How he had seen Priscilla, and how he had sped in his courtship, only smoothing a little and softening down her refusal. But when he came at length to the words Priscilla had spoken, words so tender and cruel, quote, "Why don't you speak for yourself, John?" Unquote, up leapt Captain of Plymouth and stamped on the floor until his armor clanged on the wall where it hung with the sound of a sinister omen. All his pent-up wrath burst forth in a sudden explosion, even as a hand grenade that shatters the destruction around it. Wildly he shouted, and loud, quote, "John Alden, you have betrayed me, Miles Standish, your friend. You have supplanted, defrauded, and betrayed me." Unquote. Suddenly, in the midst of his ranting, the soldier was called away to fight hostile Indians, and John was left alone to brood about loyalty and love. Months passed, and still Standish was detained, bravely subduing Native American foes. As for John, quote, "Off when his labor was finished, with eager feet would the dreamer follow the pathway that ran through the woods to the house of Priscilla, led by illusions romantic and subtle deceptions of fancy, pleasure disguised as duty, and love in the semblance of friendship." Unquote. One afternoon the young lover praised Priscilla extravagantly as she spun. Priscilla answered, quote, "Come, you must not be idle. If I am a pattern for housewives, show yourself equally worthy of being the model of husbands. Hold this skein on your hands while I wind it, ready for knitting." Unquote. She, standing gracefully erect and winding the thread from his fingers, sometimes chided a little his clumsy manner of holding, sometimes touching his hands as she disentangled expertly twist or knot in the yarn, unawares, for how could she help it, sending electrical thrills through every nerve in his body. Lo, in the midst of this scene, a breathless messenger entered, bringing in a hurry and heat the terrible news from the village. Yes, Miles Standish was dead. An Indian had brought them the tidings. Silent and statue-like Priscilla, her face looking backwards until at the face of the speaker, her arms uplifted in horror. But John Alden, upstarting as if the barb of an arrow pierced the heart of his friend, had struck his own, and had sundered once and forever the bonds that had kept him bound as a captive. Wild with excess of sensation, the awful delight of his freedom mingled with the pain and regret, unconscious of what he was doing, clasped almost with a groan the motionless form of Priscilla, pressing her close to his heart as forever his own, and exclaiming, "Those whom the Lord hath united, let no man put them asunder." On the bright wedding day, friends were assembled together, when lo, when the service was ended, a form appeared on the threshold, clad in armor of steel, a somber and sorrowful figure. Into the room it strode, and the people beheld with amazement. Bodily there Miles Standish. Grasping the bridegroom's hand, he said with emotion, "Forgive me." Thereupon answered the bridegroom, "Let all be forgotten between us, all save dear old friendship." So there you have it. The courtship of Miles Standish. Poor guy, he just lost the love of his life, was pronounced dead before his time, and got back in time to see his young strapling friend marry the one that he loved. Oh well, that's life, huh? I hope your Valentine's Day goes better than that. Alrighty. After that cheerful note, we need something to brighten up the day, so it's time for the groaner. Well, a young gentleman went into a fast food restaurant one day and ordered his meal and sat down. And as he did so, he noticed an elderly couple come through the door of the restaurant, and they were smiling at one another and holding hands, and he could just feel the emotion, the love, and the endearment for one another just sort of oozing off this couple. And they went up to the window and they ordered a hamburger and fries and a Coke. And they went and sat at a table, and the lady began to eat, and the man sat across from her just looking at her with great love and compassion. Well, it touched the young man's heart, and he thought, well, boy, you can really see they love each other, but they must be quite poor, because they only got one meal, and he's sitting there probably hungry, and she's out of his love for her and concern, he's letting her eat the meal. So the young man thought he'd do something nice, so he got up and he went and ordered another hamburger, fries, and a drink, and he took it over to the table, and he said to the couple, he says, "Hi, how are you today?" And they said, "Fine, thank you." And he says, well, you two were truly in love. And they said, well, we were high school sweethearts. We've been married for 63 years. And the young man said, oh, that's amazing. And you still love each other so much. And I said, oh, yeah. It's just, we're soulmates. And the young fellow says, well, I noticed you could only afford one meal, and I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but he said, here, you both deserve to eat. And he placed the other meal in front of the man. And the man got tears in his eyes, and he looked up at the young fellow and he says, well, son, you're right, we are very poor, and I thank you so much for your kind action, but unfortunately, it's her day to use the dentures. Alrighty. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day, everybody. Enjoy your Friday. Have a great, great weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday when we'll do something fun in the kitchen. Alright, take care. Stay safe, and God bless.